Welcome everybody. I'm glad that you could all join us on this gorgeous day today. I'm Bill Schmidt. I'm the superintendent of the Arnold Old Chandlin Resource Recovery Plant. We'll try this, see if it helps any or not. Maybe not. I'll yell even louder. Bill Schmidt, superintendent of the Resource Recovery Plant. So glad you could all join us today to celebrate this anniversary that we have. 40 years ago, City of Ames and our member communities in Story County all worked together to come up with a new, innovative, and environmentally sustainable way to manage the municipal solid waste in Story County. This wonderful feat is made possible by the foresight of the city leaders and staff back in the 1970s. Since that time, we've been able to divert 1,317,614 tons from the landfill. That's equivalent of almost 55,000 semi-loads or 13,176 rail cars. That's a tremendous amount of material that we've been able to keep out of the landfill and recover either the metals or the energy from it to generate electricity for the citizens of the Ames. One of our honored guests today is Arnold Chandlin. He and his wife Betty are able to visit us today. We're glad to have him here. Appreciate it, Arnold. Not only have we had the opportunity of serving the communities that are part of our system over the last 40 years, we're also responsible for the stewardship of our environment. And this has been accomplished through the hard work of some of the staff that you'll see in the in the black shirts with the green name tags skirted throughout the facility. They'll be giving tours later on. Through their hard work, this facility's been able to handle the discarded resources that come through these doors in a responsible, sustainable, and manner that is able to be taken care of in our own local community. We haven't had to ship material throughout the country. We're able to take care of it here locally without filling up a huge landfill. This is made possible by our partners, City of Nevada, Story City, Huxley, Slater, Roland, Gilbert, Maxwell, Cambridge, Zering, McCallsburg, Kelly, Story County, and Iowa State University. They have been members for 40 years and have signed on for another 20 years. So we continue to do this sustainable work for our community with our municipal solid waste. I'd also like to thank the time and effort that the staff of Resource Recovery has put in for this event and the work that they do every day. It's through their hard work and their help from their families and loved ones, sharing them with us, that we're able to do this wonderful job here in the City of Ames. Today we're going to have a number of speakers. The Honorable Ann Mayor Campbell will talk about some of the history of resource recovery and what it means to the city. We have former superintendents John Pullman and Gary Friel. We'll talk about the first 20 years and the last 20 years of this facility. After that, we'll be giving guided tours throughout the facility. We'll start tours here and go through the facility, so if you can kind of meet over there as you get your refreshments and go through. We also have a number of displays set out here outside the facility to talk about the things that we do and some of the services we offer the community. So with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, the Honorable Ann Campbell, Mayor of Ames.
Go ahead and test that really quick.
Testing.
Is that good in the back? So turn it up. There's
See-
the mic, the volume.
Okay, see me next time, Bill. I'll have your people do this. Well, on behalf of the city, I'd like to welcome everybody here. This is exciting to acknowledge 40 years of what I think is maybe one of the best kept secrets in Ames. I'm always struck as I am asked as mayor to go and speak to Iowa State University students who have just come to town, newcomers, high school classes, and so on, who ask me the question, why don't you recycle in Ames? And with that, I have to get pulled off the ceiling And I said, not only do we recycle, we invented it here before recycling and sustainability were part of the vocabulary of many of us on the street. But looking at what was happening in Ames in the early 1970s, and with the foresight of Arnold Chantlin and many of the city leaders at that time, in 1975, this resource recovery plant was opened. And since then, we have been able to say we are not producing methane from landfills in Story County. We are seeing fewer carloads of coal slow us down at train tracks because Resource Recovery Plant is able to provide part of our energy source for the power plant. And we are very proud of having what was the first state of the art in the nation resource recovery plant. So with that, it's an exciting time to come and recognize what we have had for 40 years, but the advances and transitions that have been made and are being made as we convert from coal to gas in the electric plant, and still are able to incorporate our resource recovery plant refuse-derived fuel into that. So with that, John Pohlman is here to tell you 20 years of history, I believe, or his 20 years of history here, and then we will move on later. So John, it's your turn now.
Thank you. Thank you, Ann. Yes, I was plant superintendent from 2000 to 2012, but I'd worked here since 1980. So I got asked by Bill here to talk a little bit about the first 20 years of operation. Now then, when the plant opened up in August of 1975, if I recall, there was an orchestra on the tipping floor in here, and it was billed as a big event, and it was a big event because it was very innovative. It had some new technologies that people hadn't really thought about. There were a lot of media hype that went with it. Sometimes the media sees the story a little bit differently. We all read the paper and have to believe some percentage of it, and that's always our challenge, to figure out how much of it's real and how much of it fit their story. But in that day, it was an innovative situation, and but there were also some, as the plant opened up, there were a few operational problems in the early years, things that became technical problems that had to be solved, and so some of the early days of reliability were kind of a challenge to some, and so there was negative publicity. There were some that felt as though that the plant was going to be making money when they first started, and such was really not the case. It did cost a little bit of money, and in fact it looked like it was becoming a lot more expensive than a basic old hole in the ground, which I would say, yeah, basic old hole in the ground was cheap, but those expenses of landfills, even in the early 1980s and even to the current day, landfills are not cheap holes in the ground anymore either, because they have to meet all sorts of rules and regulations, as we were having to do back in that day. Some of the failures were relatively technical, but could be solved, but usually that expense came with some redesigns and that sort of thing. I'll point right over here to the rotary disc greens. In the early days, they discovered too much dirt and grit and glass in the waste stream, created problems for the power plant, here in the plant in the way of abrasive materials. So there was a redesign to install rotary disc greens that did a much better job of getting that material out of the waste stream and essentially landfilling it at that time. But those kind of problems came up, different things. Another one of the problems we had that happened in August of '87, we decided that somehow we would process a propane tank that was probably completely full, and we put most of the south wall just about onto Lincoln Way. Big boom, created a lot of excitement for a few days. Well, instantly it created a lot of excitement, but I always was thankful to the Ames Police Department and Fire Department for being here as quick as they were that day and all of the help that the staff jumped in and, yeah, I'm not sure jumped in was the right word, but came to our help and tried to get the place back into operation. Those kinds of things helped drive a little bit of education at that time. We started getting education programs out to our people, letting people know that propane tanks shouldn't be thrown in their garbage. That also prompted us to get started a little bit more in the late 1980s as to household hazardous waste programs. We now have our own household hazardous waste, and I got to point out one quick thing here. I retired 3 years ago, and I still say ours. So I've always been proud of the place, even though there were some days it was a challenge to be proud because there would be problems. But to the credit of the staff that worked here, the support from the community, and the support from all of the employees and city staff, other departments, and the city council, the mayor, all of that support has helped keep the plant going, keep us operational, and keep us looking forward into the future and looking for new equipment and that sort of thing. And it's always been a challenge. One of the other things I got to mention before I'm done, and I don't know if anybody said this, but I could probably talk all day and ramble on about the plant. You can catch me after I get done here and I can do that, but up here it isn't really appropriate because you really need to see the plant. But one of the other things that happened during the first 20 was we closed out our sanitary landfill in 1991. And the relevance of that is really quite significant. Now then, we partnered, we still needed a landfill to operate the plant, but we partnered with Boone County Landfill. We had reduced what goes into our landfill enough at that time, or by that time, that we stretched out the life of that landfill another 15 years from the day that the plant opened. It was going to be closed in 1979 or 1980. We stretched it out until 91, and we thought that was a proud thing to be able to say we did too, because we do not put as much stuff in the landfill, and that means we didn't have to go looking for a new landfill or expanded landfill in the Ames area. Those are some things that I thought were great, that were significant in the early days. We had challenges and we saw our way past them, and that's great. I need to say thank you to Arnold Chantland again, because it was his foresight that really stirred this. Thank you to the council from back then. I think their name is some of the names of the city council that was involved when the plant was opened is over here on the wall. There's a bronze plaque on the wall. Thank you to those members, as well as the continuing council and mayors and current council and mayors for their continued support. And ultimately, as I worked here, I was only one part of it, and the staff was always the guys that had to be innovative and come up with solutions to problems, and they always rose to the challenge, and I appreciate that. And with that, I'll let Gary talk a little bit about some of the more current things, activities happening into the future. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I'm Gary Friel, and we'll go over a few things in the last 20 years. Like John said, we had a pretty good sized explosion in '87. And it took a few years to come up with a plan on how to make our operations safer for the plant and for the employees themselves. So in 95, 96 time frame, the plant was shut down for about 9 months. We moved the shredder outside, and by moving the shredder outside, if there was ever an explosion again, it would vent to the atmosphere and not pressurize the building as it did in that earlier time. And it also gave us the opportunity to install a dust collection system to provide a better air quality for the employees. So a lot of renovations that we did in the years to come directly impacted the safety for the employees. It had a better environmental impact and helped operational efficiencies. Over here to the left side was one of the later, this little corner of the building was for a new fire protection system. We expanded that so that we could provide better safety. But we, with the dust system, across the street, the storage bin, it used to be a round bin, so in 95, 96, that was modified. Instead of a first in, first out, it was a continuous feed system. And then a few years later, we decided that the original design for their classification system, it was redesigned. And a lot of these upgrades, you know, we look at it and it's $500,000 here, $1 million there, and pretty soon we're starting to talk pretty real money here. But to have the support, like John had indicated earlier, the community has always stood behind the facility, the people that knew about it. The community support comes right back to the council support, comes back to the mayor and city manager's support, and we are very fortunate to have the support of the community and the city staff to move forward on the rest of these projects. We have put the drum magnet in so we could recover more metals. We put a non-ferrous system in to recover those metals, the gold, the copper, the brass, the aluminums, and we continually reduce what we send to the landfill as we process it. And there's about 73% recovery of all the materials from Story County that come through our facility. We have about a 73% recovery rate, and that's a direct reflection on what we don't send to the landfill. The glass recycling program we implemented almost 10 years ago now. Great participation from the community on dropping off the glass in the yellow bins throughout the community. And out here in the driveway is just another one for emission standards. This is a hybrid end loader. John Deere came out with a hybrid. So instead of having the Tier 4 diesel engines, this is actually a battery. It's a diesel over battery. So it's just another step going the right direction on trying to protect our environment. And to reiterate one of the things that John said, we got a lot of really good engineers that helped design it, and then we got the staff, the employees over here that make the place work. They are the people that day in and day out, we implement something. It came from the logging industry, the paper industry, the scrap metal industry, and we put it into the garbage industry to try to recycle and reclaim as much as we can. And these are the true heroes that are here day in and day out. It's not the cleanest job by any means, and they stick it out. So thank you to the staff and employees here at Resource Recovery, the City of Ames for sponsoring it, and Story County community. I'm the only one holding you up from the tour to seeing the great facility, so enjoy the rest of your day.